Next on BYUSN, almost the perfect weekend for BYU sports. Cougar football loses in Stillwater in double OT. No bowl game. So where does the build for a better 2024 begin? ESPN's Trevor Matich joins us to discuss. Plus a Vegas victory. BYU men's basketball wins the Vegas showdown and continue to move up the metrics. We'll react to the hot start from Mark Pope's Cougars.
Women's volleyball closes out the regular season with the road sweep and earns the top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. Can the Cougars get back to the Sweet 16 this weekend? Yeah! And some of the stars of BYU's improbable women's soccer comebacks join us in studio. Brecken Mozingo and Olivia Wade-Katoa.
Welcome to BYU Sports Nation, presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere. It is Monday, November 27th. Hope you all had a fantastic Thanksgiving holiday and a long weekend. I am Spencer Linton. He is a man who has finally defrosted from Friday night's fun at South Field, Jerem Jordan.
It wasn't as cold as you'd think because it was snowing. If it was just like in the 20s. No, it was cold, don't get me wrong. But like, what a night. What a comeback. Why did BYU make it so hard on itself? Going down 3-0 early. Down 3-0, I thought, has the game-winning goal already been scored? Probably. And BYU makes this improbable comeback, matching the greatest comeback in NCAA tournament history in women's soccer. It is the greatest game in BYU women's soccer history. It is the greatest goal in BYU soccer history by Olivia Wade-Katoa until they win the national championship in a week from today. Then that becomes the greatest game, and that game-winning goal becomes the greatest.
That narrative shifts?
Yes, then you build on it. But what a comeback, man. Like, unbelievable. Eric Winalda tweeted about it. Like, so many people nationally
incredible response.
Thought about this. I was shocked, though, that SportsCenter gave it no love. I was expecting a top 10 play, a mention here, nothing. A little disappointed, frankly.
Well, you know what? There's this opportunity for BYU to go and, I guess, force the narrative so that they have to get mentioned on SportsCenter if you win a national championship.
In the end,
right?
who cares? But, yeah, SportsCenter loves to mention that stuff.
I think
that was the only bummer outside of football from the weekend. Yeah.
I love how the bracket is set up because BYU had to beat Utah State, the team that beat them in the regular season, and get some vengeance there. And then they matched up with North Carolina in a situation that has not been ideal for the Cougars the last 2 times they met up with the Tar Heels.
Anyone with UNC in the Elite Eight.
They found a way.
2 of those in 33 times.
Now they get another team that's given them fits in the NCAA tournament. And frankly, for a long time in any match, and that's Stanford.
Beat them in PKs last year. So Stanford wants revenge too.
Beat Stanford again, and then I'm hoping that BYU gets a rematch of Florida State in the national championship. The bracket is fascinating for sure, but what a weekend. Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
Beginning with that just wild Friday night. All rise and shout. Let's get to what's trending.
Into the end zone, touchdown, Cougars!
So much good. Almost the perfect weekend.
Almost. This close.
That close.
And me on a shoe. Oh, so close.
What's trending, presented by BYU Food to Go, the MVP of your next event. We've already chronicled some of it. A wild weekend doesn't really begin to explain just what BYU sports went through.
It was mostly awesome.
But let's go through it chronologically. Friday night, BYU women's soccer pulls off one of the most dramatic comebacks in the history of the game in the NCAA. And they beat North Carolina 4-3 to advance to their second ever College Cup. It was remarkable. Jeremy called it. It was so much fun.
It was wild.
Crazy how that united the fan base, and just everybody had something to say, understandably, after BYU was able to do that.
Volleyball and football watch parties, they're going crazy.
Yes.
It was fun. Everybody was watching.
Everybody connected there.
And I talked to a bunch of people that are like, dude, I tuned out and then I found out we won. Like, that's what happened in the Miracle Bowl in 1982.
Amazing.
1980 as well.
Yes. I knew what you meant. Not in 1982. In 1980, comma, TOO. Then a few hours after soccer pulls off just an unbelievable win, men's basketball wins the Vegas showdown in a very, very
North Carolina
hard-fought game. Fought, I choose as an operative word there, to beat NC State. Okay, so you get that one done. BYU women's volleyball takes care of business at TCU. They eventually clinch a seed in the NCAA tournament. And football had an 18-point lead at halftime in Stillwater. They're going to deny Oklahoma State a spot in the Big 12 championship game. Sooners fans were celebrating like BYU fans were a little bit too early, and then they watched it slip away in double overtime. But
women's hoops as well.
Women's
beating
hoops,
LMU.
it stays unbeaten.
Dominant win in the
They're
fourth.
6-0. BYU men's basketball 6-0. Women's basketball 6-0.
Little stat of the day coming up later on that.
Mm-hmm. So as you look back at the Wild weekend, Jeremy, I mean, what do you make of all of this for the athletic department and BYU sports as a whole?
The women continue to carry BYU. Soccer, volleyball, cross country did amazing. Basketball's off to a perfect start. Incredible. Men's basketball way better than we thought, right? And women's soccer is the headline of the weekend. But football unfortunately lost, so let's talk about that. That 18-point lead really gave you hope that BYU was going to win. Like, this was what North Carolina felt, up 3-0. But in football, that would be like up 30. But what BYU unfortunately did not do in the second half is move the ball with the regularity that they did in the first half. And the defense had a couple of takeaways. Obviously, the Eddie Heckard pick six is awesome. BYU turned it over. Only gave up a field goal on drive 1 or 2. So this is a bummer. You go to double OT. So a couple things that happened here that were significant. BYU can't do jack squat in the second half, yet they can muster a drive to get the game-time field goal, and they blocked the PAT to give them a field goal chance.
Yes.
Like, that sequence was incredible. Then you get to OT, you exchange touchdowns.
Score first.
Then Oklahoma State scores, but you stop the two-point conversion, meaning you get that touchdown and you convert, you win, baby. At worst, you go to a third OT where you're just starting to – is it in the third OT you just do
just
two-point
two-point conversions. Yeah.
So it's frustrating the last 2 weeks that BYU played pretty well. Like, second half, obviously, BYU doesn't play well, but plays pretty well the last 2 weeks against ranked teams from Oklahoma, and you don't get one of those two to get to a bowl game. Like, BYU very well could have gotten both of those games. But to not get at least one of those in the last 2 weeks was really hard. And again, I look at the last kind of 4 games for BYU. Those were teams 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the Big 12.
So
those
tough.
are good teams. BYU plays the last 2 tough. Jake Retzlaff takes strides into the offseason. Much more conversation on him coming up the next couple of weeks and months, right? But proud of the effort, but ultimately, obviously, BYU loses, and that is not enough. It is disappointing and excruciating not to make a bowl game. This team was good enough to win 6 or 7, and unfortunately, they did not.
I'm going to talk about this with Trevor Matich in just a little bit when we bring him back onto the show, but the margin of error in Power 5 football is so razor thin. Because
it's like the schedule matters. I wish I had talked about this before.
For sure.
In the last 6 years.
But think about how close BYU is to being 7-5 compared to where they finish at 5-7. And I know BYU snuck a win against Arkansas, so maybe it's
that should have been a loss.
Just think about how close BYU is to being 6-6. I mean, just give BYU one of the 2 games that they finished out with against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Like, one play changes the game against Oklahoma. You take away the 100-yard pick six, very different scenario. Maybe BYU doesn't win the game, but they don't lose it because of the pick six, right?
Yeah, because they tied the game after that.
Could BYU muster one score in Stillwater this past Saturday in the second half? Because I felt if BYU, I said at halftime, they just need to score one more time, one more touchdown, and this game's over.
If they'd get to 31.
This game's over.
Get to 31 in regulation, and you win.
If BYU scores one more time, one more touchdown in the second half, it's anything, any way, doesn't matter how ugly it is, I do not think there is enough there for Oklahoma State. There's just not enough time for Oklahoma State to overcome it.
Yeah.
But they could not do it. They could not find a rhythm in the second half.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so wildly frustrating for BYU fans is because BYU was in prime position to win both games in the last 2 weeks against ranked Oklahoma teams.
It's a good team.
Unbelievable. You had Oklahoma on the ropes on your home field, couldn't do it. And you absolutely, you had landed knockout punches, several of them. Oklahoma State had been knocked down multiple times in the early rounds. You just needed one more big-time throw, and they couldn't they couldn't make it happen in the second half.
A lot of frustration from the fan base about, the second half kind of play calling. BYU rushes the ball 5 of the 7 drives there on first down.
Or threw it. They threw it on 5 of the 7.
Sorry, threw on 5 of 7. Yeah. Didn't rush enough or whatever. It's like, ultimately, just get a first down. Whatever you think Aaron Roderick, BYU needs to do in that moment, do it, and hopefully the players can execute it. And it didn't happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, that one's going to be a tough pill to swallow, and is going to be one that BYU fans are thinking about for a long time. Yep. The last 2 weeks specifically, because they are that close to being probably matched up with Cal or UCLA in the Independence Bowl, and we're talking about, hey, BYU can win 7 games, and they got to a bowl game in their first year, and the narrative is so different. One game. And the whole narrative around BYU football is so wildly different. Yeah. But we sit here and think, 5-7, disappointment. They were so close. Now where does the rebuild begin? And that's why we have a lot of shows.
You've got to look at what changes you need to make on the staff.
For sure.
And then you've got to hit the portal, and then you've got to recruit excellent freshmen that you build in, behind them, ready to go in a couple of years if they're Michigan kids first or freshmen out of high school. So there's a lot of work to be done. The portal opens next Monday. You don't have time to mess around here. You got to make whatever changes you feel like you need to make now.
There are encouraging things for sure. We'll talk to Trevor Matich about all that in just a moment. And again, most of the weekend was awesome.
Yeah, I'm not here to be encouraged about football though. I am disappointed on Monday. I will look to the future later, but not today. Meanwhile, men's basketball wins the Vegas Showdown, beats NC State by 9. After trailing in this game by double digits, brings home a trophy. Let's go. 6-0 on the year. Ken Palm, number 10, going to be ranked in the AP poll, we think, in the next hour.
They might be in the top 20.
Could be. That was awesome, too, to blow out Arizona State, beat NC State. BYU's on the radar. People know about BYU now. It's not sneaky. Last week, BYU was sneaky. Now, I've seen tons of stuff where people are
everybody.
Okay, look at BYU.
Listening to and reading the commentary from the likes of Seth Davis and Jeff Goodman and Joe Lunardi and all of these guys, Sean Farnham obviously called the games in Las Vegas. These prominent national figures have all said BYU is a top 25 team. They are overperforming. They have surprised us all. 6-0. And again, it's not like BYU has one good win, Jerem.
I would argue 3 good wins. By the way, that play was so good. Jackson Robinson, that was worth the technical.
I didn't even care he got the technical foul.
That guy started talking, so Jackson blocks it, dunks it, yells in the guy's face. I loved it.
This is the sign of a veteran team to me, is the ability to withstand early punches, which NC State threw. BYU was not playing
Why you got to go to punches like that?
Hey, well, they're in Vegas, right? It's the title bout, right?
Tiki on Thursday, right?
The title bout in Vegas? Okay. You go there. I'm not going there.
It's pretty obvious.
No, you take it
When you say punches with BYU, it's pretty obvious.
No. But what I love is their ability to battle. Where they would have kind of faded in the past, it's they just don't have enough. They answered right back again and again and again and just kept making big shots. And they're doing so without Fus Traore in the lineup, by the way.
Question about his hamstring, right?
No Atiki because of the suspension.
Yeah, although he's in the room right there on the right. So there you go.
Ali Khalifa hasn't practiced in 3 weeks, not expected to get on the floor anytime soon. But by necessity, it's hey, Friday. Ali, can you go in and play? And he makes a huge impact.
Yeah, he was good. BYU is so good right now on both ends of the floor. Crazy efficient. Everybody knows their role. They're playing good team basketball, rebounding well, shooting the 3 well. They're so fun to watch. I am so happy for these guys who have just heard how bad they're going to be, and they have rallied around that idea, and now they have a real shot at doing some damage in non-conference of maybe 12-1, 13-0. You look at where BYU is in some ranks in the country. Are you kidding me? Margin, threes, a game, assists, rebounding, scoring. These are all things that matter. BYU, and Noah Waterman is the guy that they thought he would be when they brought him here. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes it takes a year.
Listen,
it takes a sec sometimes. Maybe in football that's what happens next year. It's it clicked for so-and-so and so-and-so in this offense and this whatever. It just takes a moment, and this is not going to be the 13th worst team in the Big 12. I don't know if they're in the top 6 or 7. I don't know if they're going to be that high, but if BYU's the 8th best team or whatever, they're a tourney team.
BYU's the 8th best team. They are in the tournament.
Absolutely a tournament team. We have a lot of ball to play, though. We have the Big 12 to see as well how BYU stacks up there. Hopefully you're healthy and keep going, but awesome, man.
They
So far, so
rebound
good.
and they play defense like
So far,
crazy.
so good.
The energy is amazing. And you bring up Noah Waterman. I love that he's making threes, Jerem, for sure. Like, we knew, like, oh, big man that can shoot threes. Like, he did not shoot the ball well until he got to Las Vegas, but he was playing better because he was defending and he was playing with physicality. And that's what they worked on all offseason.
Great now.
Noah, you are not just a three-point shooter. Now you're primarily a defender and a rebounder. And he has shown that he is.
Jackson Robinson, too. He's not just, I'll just chuck it from three guy.
Only team. BYU is the only team, I believe, right now in the top 10 in adjusted offensive efficiency and adjusted defensive efficiency in Ken Pomeroy's metrics. That's unbelievable.
Is BYU the best team in the country? I'm kidding. It's fun to watch.
Team rankings
I'm
says
enjoying
they're
this.
right there.
I know, team rankings is like the biggest blue goggles ever, dude. I love it.
Our question of the day.
1 seed.
How would all of you sum up this weekend within BYU sports? Lots of highs, some understandable lows of football, but mostly highs. So how are you summing it up? Alex Beach on X answers, a weekend of comebacks. BYU women's soccer with a miraculous comeback. Men's basketball with a great comeback in spite of injuries and suspension. And a comeback for Oklahoma State. That ends BYU's football season. Ugh. Highs and lows, but as always, hashtag go Cougs.
Yeah, what a weekend. Unbelievable. Hopefully Foose is okay, and, football, the offseason has unfortunately begun a little early.
Yep. It's also Mailbag Monday where you ask questions. We answer some of those. Gary Oliver on Facebook asks, did BYU football specifically rely too heavily on the portal this year?
I don't think so. If they had people they trusted coming up as kind of freshmen, sophomores, they would have gone to those guys. Like Isaiah Vongpachon versus Ace, Micah Kafusi, Isaiah Glasker. Like those guys didn't have the experience and skill quite yet that AJ had. So like Eddie Heckard greater than Mori Bamba, like readiness. Like Mori Bamba hopefully will be ready next year. And so on and so forth.
The portal and the lack of chemistry from the portal and all the new pieces was more tough to overcome on offense for BYU because of all the quarterback position and the receivers and the running backs, like all of that stuff. That there was more to overcome there. On defense, I mean, you plug and play Eddie Heckard and Cam Garrett and AJ Vongpachon.
AJ and Jackson Cravens and Isaiah Banya and
all those guys played huge roles and made important plays.
If BYU dips into the portal heavily, that's because they didn't feel like the guys coming up are as ready as the guys they can bring in.
I hope that some of the young players that BYU brought in through the portal, speaking of football specifically, stick around. Because then you start to build something.
Right? Like,
then you start to build something. But, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully the guys that BYU brought in last year that do have more eligibility are not going elsewhere, and they're staying here because then the chemistry starts to set in.
A certain portion will go. It's just who's staying.
Hashtag BYUSN on X, Facebook, and Instagram.
After further review is going to review further after tomorrow, 7 Eastern, on the BYUtv app, the Oklahoma State game.
Oh.
Yeehaw.
This hurts. It hurts. So close. Up next, another edition of Mad It's Monday. We'll recap the double overtime loss, look back on the season as a whole, and where does the offseason list of things to do
play of the
begin?
game right there, dude.
This is BYU Sports Nation.
Batty. What's he doing jumping there?
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by BYU Food to Go, the MVP of your next event.
If you're looking to build your brand awareness and increase market share as BYU moves into the Big 12, this is the place, BYU Athletics. We can provide the tools you need to make sure your company is seen and heard. BYU Athletics is where you can align your products and services with loyal fans that cheer for our Cougars. And they can also help your business win. Learn more about what a partnership with BYU Athletics and your company will look like. After all, this is the place. Email sponsorship at byu.edu today.
customer experience comes first. It's our focus. It's your expectation. We provide support to those that go the extra mile for all of us. Supplying products, training, and service for generations. Learn more at bradyindustries.com.
From now on, everyone will push you and pull you for their own advantage.
Do you ever feel like a chess piece yourself?
You're too young. You've no experience.
Then you had better master the rules of the game until you play it better than they can.
I am young, but I am willing to learn. And I mean to devote my life to the service of my country and my people.
Picked off, and this will be a pick six. Eddie Heckard.
Touchdown is McCall. 5 TDs for Gordon.
Oklahoma State ends BYU's season at 5-7.
A tough one, to say the least. We are live in Studio B with your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play. I'm Spencer Linton alongside Jerem Jordan. In so many ways, this is a winning Monday, except for with BYU football, who were not able to hold on to an 18-point halftime lead. That said, we bring in ESPN college football analyst and insider Trevor Matich to help us determine what the heck happened and maybe what BYU could have done differently there in the second half to hold on against Oklahoma State. Trevor, good to have you on the program. We'll start with that one. What do you make of the second half specifically, and where could BYU have made an adjustment to win that game and be bowl eligible?
The biggest adjustment, I think, was just execute. I mean, they executed in the first half. In the second half, they didn't. And part of it was because Oklahoma State made some adjustments, especially on defense, but there's only 11 guys on defense. Somewhere they're going to have a conflict. Somewhere they're going to be weak. You have to find that spot and hit it. And so there's a lot being said about how BYU threw the ball on first down so much in the second half, and it was incomplete so often and things like that, and they should have run it. Okay, you can make a case that with a big, strong offensive line, there are plays you can run when the defense stacks the line. And a lot of those are counters and powers and things like that when you're pulling people around and creating a convoy through the point of attack. But at the same time, if the defense comes up to stop the run, and BYU ran the ball really well in the first half, then they should be weaker in the secondary. And so when you're running RPOs and things like that, the read takes the quarterback to a pass. The play caller will be thinking, okay, you're up to stuff the run. We're going to take advantage behind all those guys that are up to stuff the run. And at that point, you just have to execute. From a defensive standpoint, it comes down to doing your job. I mean, the defense for most of the game was absolutely fantastic. You expected them to wear down in the second half, but you expect them to not miss assignments and have the reason that they get beat on certain plays be that the other side is really good, which Oklahoma State is, especially at running back. And the blockers for Oklahoma State are really good. That offensive line for the Cowboys is very underappreciated on a national basis. But at the same time, make them block you out of the hole. Don't just leave it. And BYU did that a number of times.
It was pretty wild that Ollie Gordon, the second, runs for 4.9 yards per carry, and we're like, hey, that was pretty good. Monster game, 34 for 166, 5 touchdowns. But defensively, BYU did great work in the first half, getting 10 points off turnovers, a pick 6 there. The offense also turns it over 2 times eventually, obviously one in overtime, double overtime that it cost BYU. But turnovers almost got BYU an opportunity in this one, but blowing an 18-point lead is really sour to end the season because a bowl game was on the line and Oklahoma State had a lot to play for. But how would you kind of summarize the opportunity that BYU had the last 2 weeks, frankly, against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, and unfortunately didn't come up with one of those ranked wins?
Well, you're right about the competitiveness the last couple of weeks. I mean, both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State weren't playing BYU in a position where it didn't really matter that much if they won or lost. They played BYU knowing that they had to win to stay alive for the Big 12 championship race. And BYU had Oklahoma right there in the palm of their hand, and they kind of turnovered it away. And with Oklahoma State, they had them. And then in the second half, they let it get away. What that tells you is that BYU is competitive. and they need to fix a few mistakes. And if they fix those mistakes, they can stay competitive. Now, this, you talk about that second half and the defense. I want to be very careful to not make it seem like I'm being critical of the defense. They were magnificent for pretty much the entire game. But down the stretch, when guys started to wear down, guys started to try to do too much to compensate for that. And that was a problem. The last 3 touchdowns that Ollie Gordon II scored were because somebody left contained. They just left it. Once it was front side contained, once it was backside contained. It's not that they got blocked out of the way. It's just they decided to come inside because the ball seemed to be going there and they wanted to help inside. And Ollie just jogged around the edge and scored 3 times between that final touchdown and then an overtime in regulation. So this is where you look at the execution. BYU was there. They were there in both of these games. But turnovers in key moments, lack of execution in key moments, and they lost their opportunity. Remember how BYU has to win. They have to win by being cleaner than the other side. And they weren't in either of the last 2 games, and they still were in position to win.
And I think that's probably the most frustrating part for BYU fans is just being right there. And the margin of error between BYU being 7-5 and 5-7 or even 6-6 is just so ultra thin. So with that said, Trevor, how does BYU build off of year 1 in the Big 12? And maybe in your opinion, what is item number 1 on the offseason agenda list?
Well, item number 1 beyond recruiting is focusing on the things that cost you the games. We always talk about how more games are lost than they are won. And BYU too many times this season turned it over even early in the first couple of plays of a game, even that turned into defensive scores in the first couple of plays of a game. And they did it again against Oklahoma State, fumbled the ball on play 2. And so these are things that they need to take care of. I would love to see a program instituted where if somebody fumbles the ball in a game, all the next week they have to carry a football around campus. And everywhere they go, except for when they enter a classroom, they have to hold that ball high and tight and squeeze it as if it's being ripped out. And then every once in a while, hey, if a student comes over and tries to hit the ball, you hit the ball. Don't hit the player, don't grab his arm, but have him just poke at the ball every once in a while, right? I would love to see that happen because this goes down to guys trying to make a play. When you're running with the ball and you see an opportunity and you try to just hit that opportunity as fast as you can, very often the ball comes away from your body a little bit to give you a little bit of extra balance as you're trying to burst or as you're trying to drive through a hole. And when that ball comes away from your body just a little bit is when it gets punched out. So it needs to be a better habit. So we start there. And the second thing is, once again, it's assignments. Do your job, trust your teammates, understand that you can't just leave your job too early to help somebody else because that hurt BYU at key times, especially on defense all through the season, certainly the second half of the season. And then the offensive line's got to get a whole lot more effective. They're going to lose some real talent. Kingsley going off to the NFL, I assume, and others. They're going to lose talent. But the offensive line, even if it has less talent next year, can be a whole lot more effective. And so they need to get that shored up because this season should have been one where the offensive line put the team on its shoulders and carried it. And that means helping the defense as well. That means the O-line saying, look, our defense is kind of thin. We've had a lot of injuries, especially up front, and then at safety as well. We as an O-line need to make sure we pile drive the opponent, we keep the ball, we get time of possession, we string out long drives to help our defense, and those things were extraordinarily rare this year, even though they should have been much, much more common than they were. So that's something that needs to be settled in. The good news about all this is that it's all very cut and dry. There is no mystery as to what needs to happen here. The biggest mystery, I think, is, well, not mystery, but they need to figure out how to get stronger and stay healthier. And so I think there needs to be a reflection on how the strength and conditioning program is run. I'm not saying anything's being done improperly there at all. I have no idea what they're doing with strength and conditioning. I can say that sometimes you do too little or you do too much, And either way, it can lead to more soft tissue injuries than you should be having. So there needs to be an evaluation there just to make sure that everything is happening the best way. These things that I'm telling you are not mysteries. These things that I'm telling you are absolutely clear what the coaches need to do and what the players need to do in order to get better. And right now begins the team of 2024. And they need to start working on those things immediately.
Jake Retzloff started the last 4 games. BYU goes 0-4, but those were tough games. You're playing the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th place teams in the Big 12. Those are all good teams. Did he show you enough to feel like he's the guy going into the offseason? And or does BYU need to bring in a transfer to compete with him for the starting job with the other quarterbacks already in the room?
BYU needs to bring in as many people as they can to compete with every position on the field. Competition is critical for a couple of reasons. One is it creates more depth, but also it creates a better scenario with the starters, because the starters know that if they don't compete correctly in practice, they might lose their job. They might lose some playing time to the guy behind them who's also very, very good. The danger you have is if you've got a position where you've got one really good starter and nobody behind him, that starter is not being pushed in practice, and that has the potential to lead to problems. So Jake did a lot of good things. I am not saying that he did poorly. I'm not pointing a finger at him at all. I am saying that they need to bring in as much talent as they have. They need to develop the current talent they have in that quarterback room to have a ferocious competition at that position. That will also be an example for the rest of the positions, because a lot of people would think that Jake kind of should be the guy. He had those starts. He came close to beating Oklahoma and Oklahoma State down the stretch. Okay, good. He's got the experience. Let's move forward with Jake. They may decide that. But if they decide to throw open the competition, then it'll show the rest of the team what Jake, if he wins it, is made of. Or it'll show the rest of the team that every position is open to competition, and Coach Satake will make sure that every position is populated with the best player that will help the team win the most. And he owes that to the rest of the program. So there are a lot of things that Jake can improve on. I mean, a lot of things. But at the same time, I think he deserves a lot of credit for going in and competing the way he did.
Trevor, it's great to talk to you. We'll finish with this. If you had to define this season, the first one in the Big 12 for BYU, in a couple of words, which words would you choose?
Disappointing, encouraging. It was disappointing that they lost the last 5 games. It was disappointing that they won some of the games the way they did early in the season. But the last 2 games, I think, were incredibly encouraging. Playing Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and being right there with the ability to win those games, but for mistakes that BYU itself made. I think that's incredibly encouraging, because there's a lot of conversation about how it takes a long time. It takes many years to get ready to compete when you move up from Group of 5 to Power 5 level, essentially. BYU showed in these last 2 games that they're a whole lot closer, and maybe even ready now, to compete at the highest level of this conference, as long as they clean up some of the mistakes that they're making. So there are no moral victories. The team would not want to be heard saying anything like that or believing it. But as an analyst and as a fan and as a person that went to BYU and played there, I am encouraged by these last 2 weeks, because I can see the path to competitiveness at a high level in the Big 12.
Trevor, we always appreciate the insights and are grateful for your time with us. And I know our fan base really looks forward to Matich Mondays. No disappointment once again today. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, guys.
Trevor Matich of ESPN on BYU Sports Nation.
We always need someone that's bearded just on the show. We can't be. We need someone.
And his beard looks fantastic.
Yeah, it looks great. So we appreciate that element of Trevor as well.
Yeah, Matich Mondays have been a focal point and one of the things that have helped carry our show during football season. He's a huge part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we didn't think that BYU would start 6-0 in hoops, right? But here we are. And the Pope Show is Thursday. They're going to have a lot of awesome to talk about. Fresno State in Salt Lake City Friday, but some big wins in Vegas over the weekend. The first solo Pope Show coming up Thursday night, 8:30 Eastern on the BYUtv app. Thursday night.
And look, we know BYU football lost the game, but there were some unbelievable moments, including the fake punt. Does this somehow make up for the fake punt failures of the past? This is BYU Sports Nation.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
think Ford, think Tim Daly Ford in Spanish Fork. With a selection of trucks, Broncos, and the all-electric Ford Lightning. Plus, on-site technicians who provide routine service and repairs with free pickup and delivery. And parts can be made readily available if you'd like to do it yourself. Tim Daly is your neighborhood Ford dealer, located right off the freeway in Spanish Fork.
Meeting Max on Mutual was unexpected.
Hi, my name is Addie.
My name's Max. I'm going to school for nursing right now.
I studied early childhood special education, and I'm a teacher now.
Addie was up in Idaho, and I was living in Draper at the time.
My friends and I just came down to Utah for a weekend. We're just all like swiping on Mutual. Like straight up, if it was not for Mutual, like we would have not have met.
We wouldn't have been able to like gone on a date had we not both been on Mutual that day at that time.
Everyone loves going to the dentist, right? When was the last time you had your teeth cleaned? Heart disease, Alzheimer's, stroke, dementia, and other inflammatory health conditions can be linked to periodontitis, a severe stage of gum disease. To help fight against gum disease, have your teeth cleaned regularly by a dentist or hygienist. To review the science behind these findings, go to visityourdentist.org. Dental cleanings are essential for your health. This message is brought to you by the eAssist Dental Health Education Foundation.
Make sure you follow BYU Sports Nation on the socials, Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
Welcome back to Studio B. I am Spencer. He is Jerem. Let's roll out your Monday headlines.
BYU football loses the season finale to number 20, Oklahoma State, 40-34 in double OT, ending the season at 5-7, 2-7 in Big 12 play.
Tied for 11th where they were picked.
Yeah, baby! The Cougars led 24-6 at halftime, gave up 21 unanswered, blocked a PAT to make it a 3-point game, and then a 48-yard field goal sent it into OT. This marks the first time BYU does not make a bowl game since 2017. Disappointing.
Hey, special teams were that special, and Will Farron's on scholarship. That's awesome.
Yeah,
let's go.
Will, I need a video of that. I need like the Washington kicker.
On to Cougars in the NFL. Tyler Algier, 10 carries for 64 yards in a 24-15 Atlanta Falcons win over the New Orleans Saints, which featured Taysom Hill, who had 26 rushing yards and 55 yards receiving for the Saints in that loss. Jamal Williams rushed 6 times, or had 6 rushing yards rather, and 4 receiving yards. Puka Nacua caught 4 passes, 27 yards for the Rams in a 37-14 win over Arizona. Sione Takitaki had 6 tackles in a Cleveland Browns 29-12 loss in Denver. Kyle Van Noy continues to play extremely well. 3 tackles and a pass breakup for the Ravens in a 20-10 win over the LA Chargers. Jaron Hall, Kyrus Tonga, and the Vikings play the Chicago Bears tonight on Monday Night Football.
1 seed women's soccer pulled off an incredible, miraculous comeback Friday night, trailing 3-0 after 20 minutes. Bella Felino scored a brace, Brecken Mozingo scored an Olympico, and Olivia Wade-Katoa completed the 4th unanswered goal in the 89th minute to win, sending BYU to its 2nd College Cup in 3 years, 4-3 against North Carolina. The Cougars play Stanford Friday at 8:30 Eastern on ESPNU and BYU Radio in Cary, North Carolina.
Beat the tree! Number 16 BYU women's volleyball beat TCU. A sweep on Saturday to wrap up the regular season at 24-6. 13-5 in Big 12 play. The Cougars, led by Aaron Livingston's 13 kills. Yesterday, BYU selected as a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, which means they'll host the 1st and 2nd rounds, beginning with Weber State on Friday night. You win there, you get the winner of Arizona State and Georgia on Saturday.
And we're doing all those on ESPN+. Let's go. Basketball, men won the Vegas Showdown, coming from behind to beat NC State 95-86. Jackson Robinson's career-high 23. BYU shot 70% from the field in the second half. Foose left the game in the first half with what looked to be a hamstring injury. Noah Waterman, MVP of the Showdown. Trevor Nell made the all-tournament team. Up next, 6-0 BYU taking on Fresno State Friday night at the Delta Center in Salt Lake.
Let's go to 7-0. Women's basketball also trying to improve to 7-0. They're 6-0 right now after a 16-point win over former WCC foe LMU. 18 points from freshman Kaylee Wilson, who continues to just be incredible. She was 7 of 9 from the field, 4 for 5 from the three-point. She's shooting 60% from the three-point line. 60% on the season.
She missed 2 free throws in a row, and you could hear her on the mic go, oh my gosh.
Lauren Gustin had 15 points and 15 rebounds for the Cougars. Nani Falate made her season debut and scored 11. Up next, a trip to Laramie to play Wyoming tomorrow night, then at Utah on Saturday.
Why are we playing games at Wyoming in any sport? What are we doing?
It's happening in football as well. Those are today's headlines.
Okay.
Now we whip. The Cougar Whip Round presented by Maersk, your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
Did Saturday's fake punt make up somehow for Johnny Linehan's 4th and 19?
No, the only thing that will make up for that is if BYU attempts another fake punt on 4th and 19 and they convert. Then we can start
Against
talking
Boise
about
State. But BYU ain't playing Boise State again.
I don't even need to be against Boise State. Just if you do something crazy like that, sure.
But it's got to be inside your own 10.
This is pretty awesome, though.
Which is Tyler Baddock trying to get hurt in the below the belt here?
He's like, I thought the dude was going to go after my ankle, so I'm like, I'm going to jump over him.
What a week. That was the funniest play. It was so good.
Where do you expect BYU men's basketball? Also enjoyable. We laughed a lot watching them beat NC State. Where do you expect them to be in today's AP poll?
What'd you say earlier?
I think they're going to be number 20.
21?
20.
20?
20, straight up.
I'll go 21.
Okay.
21.
Yeah.
You guys will be ranked. There's no question. It will happen. I promise you.
They were two spots out last week.
Two
spots out last week.
A bunch of teams lost. Yeah.
Give me a top 20 team, Jerem.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of women's hoops at Wyoming, you can listen to it on BYU Radio. We've sent Jason Shepard to Laramie, 8:30 Eastern Time on BYU Radio tomorrow.
His favorite trip of the year. Up next, let's dive into the unbelievable soccer match.
It happened.
Senior stars Brecken Mozingo and Olivia Wade-Katoa helped complete the improbable comeback. Our in-studio beat to look back on a wild win and another College Cup preview. This is BYU Sports Nation.